The feels. Hey guys, it's Kobi McCoull. Welcome back to another episode of Tuesday Tunes. Today I want to share with you a beat that I've made that I think is dark pop, but I'm not really sure because it's got overtones of EDM and electro and chill music. I don't really know. So if you think you know what the genre of this is, then comment it down below. But whatever this is, I like it. It's not that long, so I'll just play it for you just now and then we'll jump into the beat breakdown.
'Cause I've never seen such color in my wildest dreams, or my darkest nightmare. Darkest nightmare.
So the first bit I want to show you are some of the coolest sounds that I've worked with so far, and I found them from an Icelandic sample pack, and I was just amazed by the sonic character that they generated. All they are some ice scrapes and water droplets and so on, and I just thought, wow, I need to put that into an atmosphere, but they also had some really rhythmic qualities, so I wanted to experiment putting them in with the drums as well. So overall they generated this. And I was like, oh. So all I really did was cut up the samples, pitched them so that they all sounded slightly different, and then sent them to either reverb or delay. Individually, they sound like this. And there's something so satisfying about the timbre or the texture that those sounds have. And then putting them through the reverb and pitching them just added even more dimension to that. Now this sound, for example, just by pitching it a lot, gave it like a robotic quality. Everything just had this eerie yet delightful texture to it, and I was really happy with it. And then just put a vinyl over the top just to add even more of a kind of lo-fi feel. Then in the main parts of the song where I removed the atmosphere, I still wanted to keep some in that I would fit with the drums. So on their own, they don't necessarily sound that rhythmic, but when you play them with the drums, they really do. And something interesting happened with this particular one. It kind of sounded like someone was drowning underwater, or at least shouting underwater, and I was like, wow, that's that's cool and scary. So on its own, so I recorded my own vocal on top of it. Come back! Which is just me saying come back with my hands on my face like this. Come back, come back. And obviously on its own it sounds a bit silly, but when it's in the context of everything else, it really does sound quite eerie. That led me on to this like faller sound. I was like, wow, that's like a robotic cascade of emotion, begging for like a hard-hitting dark kick and sub to come in after it. That brings me on to the drums. This ice scrape, I actually had it in rhythm with the drums. Come back, come back. So it's funny, they almost act like timps, or they're such percussive sounds, and I was really enjoying that. It's actually very simple. There's two slightly different kicks. So the rhythmic pulse kick is just slightly lighter and softer. That's what allows it to flow up and down. And then I took a snare that I didn't want the snare to be really big. I just wanted it to be quite crispy. So with them, I just had a basic 808. And it's amazing how much that like chugs because of that delicate kick in between, because it adds this levity to the beat, but there's that solid 4 on the floor just ramming back in every time. And the ice scrape that comes in after that, it just adds another element of like to it without it being overly aggressive. There's energy there, but it's just contained, like only just contained. So the next place I'd go to would be the piano, and the piano that I used in this is a free piano that I've mentioned in other videos, and if you don't have it yet, definitely go and get it. It's such a fantastic sound, and I still can't believe that it's free. It's the Spitfire Audio piano, and I'll leave the link down below if you want to go and get it, because it just sounds so wonderful. I just had the main chord playing like this. And one of the things about this piano that makes it sound so lovely is that it's got realness to it. It's based on real recordings, so you can hear the hammer of the piano hitting in different places. There are notes that have overtones that are slightly off-center. It just feels real, and that's one of the main things that makes a piano sound good. So I took the main chords and reversed them into the next one. I removed the sub sound from the piano because I didn't want the piano to do all of the work, and just added a synthesized sub on its own so that it was really thick, and together with the atmosphere, this is what it sounds like. So of course the drums have to go with that. And notice I took the kick away sometimes because it gives more emphasis to the fullness of the piano and the bass together, and it's just delightful. And then the last thing that I would add in, which I actually think was probably the first thing that I started with, was this arpeggio. Now, it might sound weird on its own, and that's because it is, but when you play it with the drums, it makes a lot more sense. In the MIDI, it just looks like this. So I put it through an EQ, an imager, and panning here, and I just have the panning automated to go back and forward. The way that I controlled it using the EQ was by sidechaining it to the kick and making the EQ dynamic. Now you could say why not just sidechain it, but I just wanted to experiment firstly with this technique because I wondered whether I could make one of the stock plugins dynamic, and turns out that you can. But also because I didn't want to duck the whole thing, I wanted to retain some of the info from it, and I wanted it to kind of pulse slightly more than it does just with a sidechain, just ducking it all right down. The main key part of the sound, at about 500 Hz or so, doesn't duck, but the bass part does, and the higher end does. And then I just used the classic EQ sweep to make it rise back out when I took the kick off, just to add even more emphasis to that part. And the final part to it all was the vocals. So I just ran it through the normal vocal processing that I would have, but I also decided to create harmony layers by flattening all of it and then choosing whichever notes that I wanted it to go to. So it kind of sounds like a vocode, but there's slightly more depth to it because it's not being generated by a synth. It's literally just the vocals pitched at different levels.
Color in my wildest dreams, my wildest dreams, or my wildest dreams, darkest, my wildest dreams, or my darkest nightmare.
And I think I'll probably make videos in the future about how I process the vocals like that, in terms of how to record the other harmonies and how to make sure that they don't overpower the other vocal, and certain ways to chop and cut things so that they sound better. And I'm also learning a lot about all of that right now too. And then I used the reverse reverbs that I often do and panned them to either side. And then I also just had the end of Nightmare. And I also used Alter Boy to pitch down the end of the phrase.
Darkest nightmare.
Just so that it went from being light and luscious down into a slightly more sinister sound.
Streets are my darkest nightmare.
And notice that I had the effects on a lot at the beginning so that there was lots of reverb, but then actually pulled all of the effect away because it makes it more delicate in your ears. As I lead up to the word color, it's got all the vocal harmonies and it's got reverb and delay, and then it all comes off so that it's much more soft and delicate.
Color in my wildest dreams, my wildest dreams. So
it's like totally dry and it's just, it tickles your ears. It's really nice.
my wildest dreams or my darkest nightmare.
And because that's a much smaller signal, again, it gives good contrast to when everything else finally comes back in.
My darkest nightmare.
So who knows where I'll go with that in the future, because at the moment it's just an idea, but I'm really enjoying it, so we'll see. I never really know how much depth to go into, so if you guys let me know and I'll talk about either specific things, maybe make separate videos for individual parts. I don't know, it's up to you, so let me know. So that was that. I'd love to know what you think. Please do leave a comment down below, like and subscribe if you liked the video. Hopefully you learned something, or maybe you have a few new ideas. I really look forward to sharing the next video with you, but until then, bye!
So my darkest nightmare. So my darkest nightmare.